My recommendation to the leaders to go to Israel, and I think to support people, just people. I'm not speaking about any institutions, just to support people who've been under terroristic attacks.
That was President Zelensky earlier last week, offering up his advice to leaders after the attacks by Hamas on Israel. Zelensky was in Brussels for a visit with NATO's defense ministers. Earlier, I spoke to NATO's Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, about the alliance's support for Ukraine, even as another war escalates. Secretary General Stoltenberg, nice to see you this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
We will talk about Ukraine, of course, but I wanted to talk about the situation in the Middle East. The Israeli defense minister did brief people at NATO. What conversations has NATO had this week about the attack by Hamas?
Well, NATO allies have strongly condemned the horrific terrorist attacks against Israel and stated clearly that this is absolutely unacceptable, and therefore so NATO allies support Israel's right to defend itself, and we were briefed by the Israeli defense minister today, and of course it is shocking to also see pictures from what really happened, and allies again condemned the terrorist attacks in the meeting today.
I know that President Zelensky was there, and obviously the focus for NATO continues to be the war in Ukraine. How has or did NATO reassure Ukraine about its commitment, even with now this divided attention in the world?
So NATO doesn't have the luxury of choosing only to be focused on one challenge, one conflict. We need to be able to address many challenges at the same time. And we reassured President Zelensky that's exactly what we are doing now. We of course are extremely concerned about the situation in the Middle East, but and allies also some allies are also providing support to Israel, but at the same time, we will maintain, and we are maintaining, our support for Ukraine. Just at this meeting, allies have made a new announcement of more ammunition, more supplies to Ukraine, and that includes Canada, that also have just recently announced more ammunition, more winter clothing, more winter gear for Ukrainians.
Secretary General, do you see signs of fatigue in terms of this conflict? Certainly, there were some domestic politics at play in Poland in the past number of weeks. The aid from the U.S. was blocked at Congress. Doesn't mean it won't get there, but for now it is blocked. Are you concerned about signs of fatigue?
Well, we are 31 democracies, and in open democratic societies there will always be discussions about important and challenging decisions. So yes, there are some discussions in different NATO countries, but I'm absolutely confident that NATO allies will continue to stand by Ukraine. And we have demonstrated that at our defense ministerial meeting here in Brussels today. Not only in words, but also in deeds. Big new announcements of more air defense, of heavy equipment, of advanced missile systems, and many other types of support, including from Canada. So in one way, action speaks louder than words.
Let me ask you some specific questions about that equipment and to support. The head of NATO's military council said that allied nations were getting to, quote, the bottom of the barrel in terms of munitions that they can provide. Canada's chief of the defense staff has also raised concerns about what Canada can provide. What does the way forward look like for Ukraine, given that reality, that these things are simply not being produced fast enough?
It's absolutely correct that during the first months of this war, allies were digging into their stocks to be able to provide support to Ukraine. And some of them were running quite low because we actually delivered so much to Ukraine. But since last summer, NATO allies have started to focus on the need to produce more, because the answer is to increase production, both to replenish our own stocks, but also then to be able to continue to provide support to Ukraine. And it's a good thing to see that NATO allies are signing contracts with the defense industry, ramping up production. And also in NATO we have something called framework contracts, and we have now in place 2.4 billion in framework contracts for critical types of ammunition. So there's an urgent need to produce more, and the good news is that allies are increasing production of weapons and ammunition to support Ukraine.
I know you met with Minister Blair while he was there. There have been conversations in this country about cuts needed at the Department of National Defense. That's something that he says isn't quite accurate. I think the Chief of the Defense Staff would have a different view. I know you won't get into what's happening into domestic politics, but I wonder if you got reassurances from Minister Blair about Canada still meeting that 2% target.
As I met with Minister Blair here at the NATO Defence Ministerial meeting in Brussels, and of course I welcome the fact that Canada over the last years have significantly increased defence spending, as all other NATO allies have done, because we agreed in 2014 after Russia annexed Crimea and went into Eastern Donbass that we needed to spend more in a more dangerous world. And I welcome the increase that we've seen, including in Canada, and I expect all allies, including Canada, to meet and to follow up on the promise we made this summer at the NATO summit in Vilnius, that we should spend minimum 2% of GDP, or gross national product, on defence, because in a more dangerous world we need to invest more in our security.
Just last question, Secretary General, as we mark 600 days since this invasion, what are you thinking about the state of the war and how much longer this can go on?
So wars are by nature unpredictable. Yes. They tend to last much longer than we believe at the start of the world. What we have seen so far is that the Ukrainians have been able to make significant gains. But at the same time, Russia is also mobilizing more. They are ramping up production of ammunition or weapons. They are reaching out to North Korea and Iran. So we need to be prepared for a long war, for the long haul. Mm-hmm. What we do know is that the stronger Ukraine becomes, the sooner this war will end. And the stronger they are on the battlefield, the stronger their position will be around the negotiating table. So if you want an end to this war, the best way to do that is to provide support to Ukraine.
Mr. Stoltenberg, Secretary General, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.